The void between stars stretched silent, an endless tapestry of cold darkness pricked by distant, indifferent suns. Against this backdrop, the starship designated UNSC Endeavour seemed insignificant, a mote of dust daring to trespass in realms where humanity had never been welcome. Yet, within its shielded hull resided Nathaniel Jones, ambassador plenipotentiary of the United Sol Federation, burdened with a mission that felt less like diplomacy and more like a final, desperate plea. He stood before the main viewport, gazing not at the familiar constellations of Earth, but at the monstrous silhouette that eclipsed them. The Crimson Oath, flagship of the Morthan Empire, hung in space before him, vast and menacing. A predator carved from obsidian metal and simmering resentment. Its scale was difficult to comprehend. A city designed for war, bristling with weapons capable of sterilizing continents. For decades, the Morthan advance had been relentless, species after species falling silent beneath their technologically superior might. Their worlds rendered barren or subjugated. Earth, isolated and vastly outnumbered, was next. Jones carried not treaties or proposals of mutual benefit in the traditional sense, but a single, fragile hypothesis. A gamble based on fragmented data and desperate hope. His shuttle, a tiny insect beside the Leviathan, detached from the Endeavour and began its slow approach. Through the reinforced transperisteel, Jones watched the Crimson Oath grow, its intricate surface details resolving into complex arrays, docking bays large enough to swallow cruisers, and gun emplacements that tracked his vessel with unnerving precision. A knot tightened in his stomach, a familiar companion on this journey. He smoothed the front of his formal diplomatic attire, the dark fabric a stark contrast to the stark, utilitarian design of the shuttle's interior. His reflection showed a man in middle age, lines of worry etched around eyes that had seen too much political maneuvering and too little genuine peace. Yet, within those eyes burned a resolve forged in the crucible of impending extinction. He had to succeed. There was no alternative. A synthesized voice, devoid of inflection, echoed through the shuttle cabin. Ambassador Jones, you are cleared for final approach to docking bay Gamma 7. Maintain current velocity. Morthan protocol dictates you will be met by an honor guard. No personal weapons are permitted beyond this point. Compliance is mandatory. Understood. Crimson Oath Control, Jones replied, his voice steady despite the tremor he felt within. He had already surrendered his standard-issue sidearm. His only weapon now was reason, and a biological theory that bordered on the unbelievable. The shuttle slid into the cavernous bay with practiced ease, magnetic clamps engaging with a dull thud. The atmosphere inside was breathable, Jones noted from the environmental readouts, though likely tailored precisely to Morthan physiology. The hangar was immense, filled with sleek, menacing Morthan fighters and troop transports. Ranks of Morthan soldiers stood at attention, their forms tall and imposing within articulated crimson armor that seemed fused to their bodies. Their faces, visible through translucent visors, were sharp, angular, and bore an expression of cold discipline that bordered on contempt. They were humanoid, yet distinctly alien, with skin tones ranging from slate gray to deep obsidian, and eyes that glowed with a faint, internal luminescence. Their presence was overwhelming, a silent testament to the Empire's power. The shuttle ramp lowered, and Jones stepped out into the vastness of the hangar. The air was cool, carrying a faint metallic tang. The gravity felt slightly heavier than Earth standard. Immediately, two imposing guards flanked him, their movements fluid and precise. They did not speak, merely gestured for him to follow. Their silence was more intimidating than any threat. They led him through sterile corridors of polished black metal, the only illumination coming from recessed strips of pale blue light along the floor and ceiling. The scale of the ship was oppressive, designed to awe and intimidate. There were no decorations, no art, only function and the cold geometry of power. Doors hissed open before them and sealed silently behind, each portal emphasizing his isolation deep within the enemy's heart. Finally, they arrived at a large antechamber. The guard stepped aside, gesturing towards a towering doorway. "The Empress awaits," one of them stated. The voice filtered through his helmet, synthesized and harsh. It was the first direct communication he'd received since docking. Jones took a deep breath, collected himself, and walked through the portal. He found himself in the throne room, or what passed for one on a Morathan warship. It was a vast, circular chamber, dominated by a raised platform at the far end. Upon this platform sat a single, ornate command chair, and seated upon it was Empress Serika. She was even more striking and more terrifying than the intelligence reports had suggested. Clad in regal armor of deeper crimson, inlaid with gold filigree that seemed to absorb the ambient light, she projected an aura of absolute authority. Her skin was the color of polished jet, flawless and stark against the metallic throne. Her features were sharp, regal, almost predatory, and her eyes, a piercing, luminous silver, fixed upon him the moment he entered. They held no warmth, only calculation and an ancient weariness that seemed incongruous with her apparently youthful appearance. Reports claimed Morathan lifespans were significantly longer than human ones. Beside her throne stood a figure in equally imposing armor, but of a gunmetal gray coloration, General Corvus Vrax, commander of the Morathan fleets, his expression an unreadable mask of stern duty. Other figures, presumably advisors or high-ranking officers, stood motionless in the shadows along the chamber's periphery. The air crackled with tension. Jones walked steadily towards the dais, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the unnerving silence. He stopped at the designated distance, a respectful space between subject and ruler. Though he was neither, Ambassador Nathaniel Jones of Earth, Serika's voice resonated through the chamber, clear and commanding, yet possessing a strange melodic quality beneath the layers of imperial frost. "You have come a long way to witness the twilight of your species." Her words were not deliberately cruel, merely stated as fact. "Empress Serika," Jones replied, inclining his head slightly, a gesture of diplomacy, not subservience. "I come representing the people of Earth, seeking not subjugation, but understanding. We believe there may be a path forward that benefits both Morathan and human." A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Serika's lips, devoid of humor. "Understanding. Your species understands only desperation. You approach us now because your extinction is imminent. Your fleets are shattered, your colonies isolated. What could you possibly offer the Morathan Empire except your final, unconditional surrender?" "We offer knowledge, Empress," Jones stated, keeping his voice level. "Knowledge that could fundamentally alter the future of your people. Our biologists have made a discovery concerning Morathan physiology, something overlooked, something potentially vital." General Vrax shifted, his armored hand resting near the hilt of the energy weapon at his side. "Lies and desperation," he growled, his voice a low rumble. "The human seeks only to stall the inevitable. Empress, grant me leave to silence this prattling fool." Serika raised a slender, gauntleted hand, silencing the general instantly. Her silver eyes remained fixed on Jones. "Explain this knowledge. Be concise. My patience is not infinite. Our studies suggest a unique, perhaps symbiotic, interaction between human biochemistry and Morathan cellular structure," Jones began, choosing his words carefully. Specifically, certain complex proteins and enzymes present in humans, absent in Morethans, might enhance your biological processes, increase resilience, adaptability, perhaps even mitigate certain inherent genetic limitations. Silence descended again, heavier this time. Jones could feel the weight of disbelief, the palpable skepticism from every Morathan in the room. Serika's expression remained unchanged, but her eyes narrowed fractionally. Genetic limitations, she repeated softly. Dangerously. The Morathan form is perfection. Ambassador. We are the apex of evolution in this galaxy. What limitations dare you imply? Before Jones could elaborate, a chime sounded softly through the chamber. An aide approached the throne, bowing low and murmuring something Jones couldn't hear. Serika listened impassively, then nodded. It seems your audience must be momentarily suspended. Ambassador, she declared, rising from her throne with a fluid grace that belied the bulk of her armor. There is a matter of internal discipline requiring my personal attention. An execution. Perhaps witnessing Morathan justice will clarify for you the futility of resistance. She turned, her crimson cloak swirling around her. You will accompany me. Consider it part of your education. Jones felt a chill despite the regulated temperature. He had no choice but to follow as Serika, flanked by Vrax and her guards, swept out of the throne room. He knew what was coming. Intelligence reports spoke of the Empress's unique, terrifying power, a touch that meant instant death. No Morathan, let alone an alien, could withstand direct skin contact with her. It was the ultimate symbol of her absolute authority, a biological weapon integrated into the very fabric of her being. They proceeded to an observation gallery overlooking a stark, metallic chamber below. Floodlights illuminated a single Morathan soldier, stripped of armor, kneeling in the center. His face was a mask of terror. Serika stood before the transperisteel window, gazing down at the condemned soldier. The gallery was silent, the assembled officers watching with detached interest. This was routine. This officer failed in his duty, Serika announced. Her voice amplified slightly for the gallery. He allowed a critical shipment of ordnance to be compromised by insurgents on Cygnus X4. Failure carries consequences. In the Morathan Empire, the ultimate consequence is delivered by my hand. She turned away from the window and proceeded towards a descending lift platform. Jones watched, morbidly fascinated and deeply disturbed, as she descended to the execution chamber floor. The guards below kept their distance. Serika walked slowly towards the kneeling soldier, her movements deliberate. She stopped before him. The soldier trembled violently but remained kneeling, head bowed. With a gesture that was almost ceremonial, Serika slowly removed her right gauntlet. Jones caught his breath. Her bare hand was revealed, the same jet-black skin as her face, elegant and slender, yet radiating an almost visible aura of menace. The condemned soldier squeezed his eyes shut. Serika reached out, her fingers extending towards the bare skin of the soldier's neck. The moment her fingertips made contact, a violent, visible energy discharge erupted. It was not fire or electricity, but something far stranger, a ripple of pure, destructive biological force. The soldier convulsed instantly, his body stiffening, his eyes flying open in a final rictus of agony. A network of black, necrotic patterns spread outwards from the point of contact with terrifying speed, consuming his flesh. Within seconds, his body collapsed, little more than a desiccated husk, crumbling into gray dust that scattered across the metal floor. A collective sigh seemed to pass through the Morathan observers in the gallery, a sound not of shock, but of reaffirmed certainty. Jones felt sickened, but also strangely vindicated. This was the power he was here to confront. the biological curse he believed humanity might inadvertently hold the key to mitigating. Serika stood over the remains for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, deliberately, she retrieved her gauntlet and slid it back onto her hand, concealing the lethal touch once more. She ascended back to the observation gallery, her silver eyes sweeping over the assembled officers, then finally settling on Jones. "That, Ambassador," she said, her voice soft but carrying immense weight, "is the price of failure. That is the power you face. That is why no species dares to truly defy the Morathan Empire. Do you understand now the nature of Morathan limitations?" Jones met her gaze, his horror warring with his resolve. "I understand the consequences, Empress, but my proposal is not about defiance. It is about potential, evolution, perhaps. What if that power, that lethality, is not inherent strength, but a symptom, a flaw that can be corrected?" General Vrax stepped forward again, his voice tight with fury. "Insolence! How dare you suggest the Empress's divine right, her very essence, is a flaw? Enough, General," Serika commanded, her gaze unwavering on Jones. "The human's audacity is noteworthy. He speaks of enhancing Morathan physiology through contact with his kind. A bold claim, bordering on suicidal fantasy." She paused, a thoughtful, dangerous glint in her eyes. "You intrigue me, Ambassador Jones. Against my better judgment, I grant you a private audience. Come, we will discuss this potential further, away from judgmental ears." She turned and strode towards a private corridor, leaving Vrax simmering and the other officers exchanging uncertain glances. Jones, taking a deep breath, followed her into the unknown. The image of the disintegrated soldier burned into his mind. The stakes had just become terrifyingly personal. The private chamber was smaller, more functional than the throne room, yet still bore the hallmarks of Morathan design: dark metals, cool lighting, an atmosphere of austere power. A central table dominated the space, its surface displaying complex holographic projections of star charts and fleet deployments. Serika gestured towards a simple chair opposite her own command seat, then dismissed the guards with a subtle nod. The door hissed shut, leaving Jones alone with the deadliest being he had ever encountered. Serika seated herself, removing her helmet and placing it carefully on the table. Her jet-black hair was pulled back severely, emphasizing the sharp, regal lines of her face. Those luminous silver eyes studied him intently, searching for weakness, for deceit. "Now, Ambassador," she began, her voice losing some of its public formality, becoming quieter, more intense. "Speak plainly. This theory of yours, human biochemistry enhancing Morathans, explain the basis for such an outlandish claim." Jones gathered his thoughts, focusing on the scientific data, the core of his desperate mission. "Empress, our deep space probes and captured Morathan medical data, fragmented as it is, led our xenobiologists down an unexpected path. We observed anomalies in Morathan cellular regeneration, certain protein folding patterns that suggest fragility, a susceptibility to specific environmental factors and pathogens that seems almost paradoxical given your empire's technological dominance." Serika leaned forward slightly, her interest piqued despite her skepticism. "Fragility. We conquered half the Orion arm. We are immune to contagions that have wiped out lesser species. Explain this alleged fragility." "It's subtle," Jones admitted. "Perhaps a better term is rigidity. Your genetic code appears remarkably stable, almost artificially so. There's a lack of variation, of the adaptive mutations common in most complex life. It makes you powerful in known environments, but potentially vulnerable to the unexpected. Our hypothesis is that certain complex biocompounds, abundant in human tissues, could act as catalysts, introducing a degree of controlled variability, enhancing protein repair mechanisms, perhaps even stimulating dormant genetic pathways. Dormant pathways, Serika scoffed, though a flicker of something unreadable crossed her features. Our evolution is complete, Ambassador. We shed the weaknesses of our ancestors millennia ago. Did you? Jones pressed gently. Or were certain traits suppressed, locked away? Our data suggests Morithan physiology operates under immense internal stress, maintaining its current state. The very power you demonstrated earlier, your lethal touch, our scientists theorize it might be an extreme, uncontrolled manifestation of this internal biological conflict, a defense mechanism turned pathologically potent. Serika stiffened, her eyes narrowing dangerously. You tread perilous ground, human. To suggest the source of my authority, the legacy of the first Empress, is a pathology. I suggest it might be a power that could be understood, perhaps even controlled, rather than simply wielded as a tool of destruction. Jones countered, holding her gaze. Imagine harnessing that energy, Empress. Imagine resilience beyond measure, adaptation beyond current limits. That is the potential our interaction might unlock. For a long moment, Serika simply stared at him, the silence stretching taut. He could almost see the calculations running behind those silver eyes, weighing the insult against the staggering implication, the risk against the potential reward. You claim human contact could provide this enhancement, she said finally, her voice low. You propose an alliance based on this. You expect me to believe that your frail, short-lived species holds the key to our evolution. I expect you to consider the evidence, Empress, Jones replied, to allow controlled scientific study. A small group of human volunteers, working with your best scientists. If we are wrong, you lose nothing but a little time. If we are right, Serika leaned back in her chair, tapping a single black finger against the armrest. And how would you propose to prove such a fantastical theory, Ambassador? What controlled study could possibly demonstrate this interaction without resulting in your immediate disintegration? Jones hesitated. This was the crux, the point where theory had to meet reality. The initial interaction would need to be indirect, cellular samples, biosignatures. But eventually, yes, controlled exposure would be necessary. Our hypothesis suggests that under specific, carefully managed conditions, the interaction might be moderated, non-lethal, even beneficial. Beneficial to whom? Serika murmured, almost to herself. Then, louder. You ask me to risk Morithan purity, the very essence of our being, based on the desperate theories of a doomed race. Suddenly, a low, powerful tremor ran through the ship. Not an explosion, but a deep vibration, as if some massive internal machinery had momentarily surged or shifted. The holographic displays flickered. Both Jones and Serika instinctively braced themselves. The tremor was brief but strong enough to unsettle the room. Serika, caught slightly off balance as she leaned forward, started to slide from her seat. Her hand flailed out for purchase. Instinct, pure and unthinking, took over Jones. He reached out, grabbing her arm to steady her before she fell. His bare hand closed around her bare wrist. The gauntlet having been removed along with her helmet, time seemed to stop. The silence in the room became absolute, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's systems. Jones's mind screamed at him. You touched her! He expected the searing agony, the instantaneous dissolution he had witnessed just moments before. He braced for oblivion. Nothing happened. He looked down at his hand, gripping her smooth, cool, jet black skin. His fingers felt normal. No energy discharge, no burning pain, no necrotic spread. He was alive. He was touching the Empress, and he was alive. He looked up, his eyes wide with shock, meeting Serika's gaze. Her own silver eyes were wider than he thought possible, reflecting a profound, utter astonishment that mirrored his own. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound emerged. She stared at his hand on her wrist as if it were some impossible artifact from another dimension. Slowly, hesitantly, Jones released her arm. Serika pulled her hand back as if burned, though there was no mark, cradling it against her chest, staring at the point of contact. Then, she looked at her wrist again, her breath catching audibly. Where his fingers had gripped her, the jet-black skin was changing. It wasn't a burn or a rash, it was a subtle, yet undeniable, lightening. Faint, swirling patterns, like dormant pigments rising to the surface, were appearing, shifting the deep black towards a warmer, softer tone, closer to human flesh. It was subtle, like watching dawn break on a miniature scale upon her skin. But it was undeniably happening. What is this? Serika whispered, her voice barely audible, stripped of its usual command, filled only with disbelief and a dawning, terrifying wonder. Jones stared, equally speechless. His wild theory, his desperate gamble, had just manifested in the most direct, unbelievable way possible. He hadn't died, and she was changing. The touch hadn't killed him, it had awakened something within her. Their biology, human and Morathan, had just interacted in a way that defied everything either of them knew. The foundation of the Morathan Empire, the curse of the Empress's touch, had just been shattered by a simple, instinctive human gesture. The future had just become infinitely more complicated and infinitely more dangerous. The transformation on Serika's wrist was slow but persistent. The patch of subtly lighter skin, a stark anomaly, against the uniform jet black of the rest of her arm. She kept flexing her fingers, staring at the mark as if expecting it to vanish. Yet it remained, a living testament to the impossible moment. The shock that held them both captive slowly gave way to a maelstrom of questions and implications. Your theory, Serika breathed, finally tearing her gaze from her wrist to meet Jones's eyes again. The imperious mask was gone, replaced by a raw vulnerability mixed with dawning scientific curiosity. It wasn't just theory, it seems not. Empress, Jones replied, his voice hoarse. The interaction, it's real, and it's not lethal, at least, not for me. For you. He gestured towards her arm. Serika instinctively pulled her sleeve down, concealing the mark, a gesture of ingrained caution returning. This changes everything, she murmured. Or nothing. It could be an anomaly, a one-time reaction. Was it? Jones countered gently. Or is it proof that our species share a connection deeper than anyone imagined? A connection your empire has spent millennia denying. A new tension filled the room, different from before. It was the tension of discovery, of a paradigm shattering. Serika rose from her chair and began pacing the confined space, her movements agitated, betraying the turmoil within. If this is true, if human contact can alter Morathan physiology, the implications are catastrophic. For my rule, for our identity, for everything we believe ourselves to be. Or, Jones suggested, it could be the key to a future you never thought possible. A future beyond endless conquest, beyond the fear your lethal touch imposes. Serika stopped pacing, her back to him. Fear is control, Ambassador. My touch ensures loyalty, prevents betrayal. It is the bedrock of my authority. Is a throne built on fear truly stable? Empress, Jones asked quietly. She didn't answer immediately. When she turned back, some of the imperial composure had returned, though the uncertainty lingered in her eyes. This phenomenon must be investigated thoroughly, secretly. No one can know, not Vrax, not the High Council, not yet. I agree, Jones said. Who can you trust? Serika considered this, her gaze distant. There is one. Dr. Alara Varela, head of xenobiological research. She is brilliant, discreet, and perhaps more open-minded than most. Her loyalty is to science, to truth, more than to dogma. Then we bring her in, Jones urged. We need answers. What just happened? Why am I immune? Why is it changing you? Serika nodded slowly. I will summon her. But you, Ambassador, must remain here, under guard, ostensibly, but in reality, under my protection. Your survival is now critical to this investigation. Any hint of what transpired here reaching the wrong ears could trigger chaos. Vrax would see this as weakness, as contamination. He would use it to challenge me. I understand, Jones said. He knew he was effectively a prisoner, but a prisoner whose existence had suddenly become pivotal. Using a secure, encrypted channel on her command console, Serika contacted Dr. Varela, requesting her immediate presence in the private chamber, citing a matter of utmost imperial security requiring biological consultation. Within minutes, the door hissed open again, admitting a Morathan woman whose appearance contrasted sharply with the military personnel Jones had encountered. Dr. Varela was slender, wearing the gray uniform of the scientific corps rather than armor. Her skin was a lighter shade of gray than most, and her eyes, though the same luminous Morathan type, held an inquisitive, analytical light rather than cold authority. She carried a sophisticated scanning device. Empress, Varela bowed respectfully, her gaze flicking curiously towards Jones, then back to Serika. You summoned me. Doctor, Serika said, her tone regaining its command. We have encountered an unprecedented biological event requiring your immediate and most confidential analysis. Ambassador Jones has information pertinent to your field, but the primary subject, Serika paused, then slowly rolled up her sleeve again, revealing the patch of subtly altered skin on her wrist. Doctor, Varela's professional composure momentarily slipped. Her eyes widened, and she took an involuntary step closer, her gaze fixed on the anomaly. Empress, what is this? It resembles pigmentary reactivation, cellular morphology shifting. By the first stars, how? That, Serika said, gesturing towards Jones, is what you must determine. The ambassador and I made brief physical contact, his hand on my wrist. He survived. Varela looked sharply at Jones, then back at Serika's wrist, her mind clearly racing. Impossible, she murmured, already bringing her scanner to life. Direct contact is universally fatal, unless the ambassador possesses some unknown biological shielding. Or, her voice trailed off as she began scanning Serika's wrist, the device emitting soft, fluctuating tones. Holographic readouts flickered into existence in the air beside her, displaying complex molecular structures and energy signatures. Or the premise is flawed. Doctor, Jones interjected quietly, perhaps the lethality is conditional. Varela ignored him for the moment, utterly absorbed in her readings. The cellular structure is adapting, reconfiguring. Protein sequences are unlocking, binding with ambient atmospheric elements in a way I've never observed. It's not degradation, Empress. It's transformation, extremely localized, but undeniable. She then turned the scanner towards Jones, running a quick, non-invasive bioscan. Human biology. Standard Terran genotype. Elevated adrenaline. Expected stress markers. But nothing extraordinary. No shielding. No countermeasures detected. She lowered the scanner, looking utterly bewildered. The reaction is originating entirely from you, Empress, triggered by his contact. My theory, Doctor, Jones explained calmly, is that human biochemistry contains catalysts capable of interacting with and potentially enhancing Morathan physiology, triggering dormant potentials. Varela stared at him, then back at Serika. Dormant potentials. Ambassador. Morathan genetics are stable, perfected. Are they, Doctor? Serika asked, her voice low and intense. Or is our perfection an artificial construct? Look deeper. Compare my affected cells with the ambassador's baseline scans. Look for compatibilities, resonances, homologies that shouldn't exist. Varela, galvanized by the direct command and the sheer impossibility of the situation, returned to her scanner, her fingers flying across the controls, initiating deeper comparative analyses. The holographic displays became denser, filled with scrolling genetic code, protein models, and bioenergy graphs. Minutes stretched into an eternity of silence, punctuated only by the hum of the scanner and Varela's occasional sharp intake of breath. Finally, she looked up, her expression a mixture of awe and disbelief. Empress, Ambassador, the compatibility is significant, far beyond statistical probability for unrelated species. There are shared genetic markers, ancient, deeply recessed sequences in your DNA, Empress, that show a clear homology with baseline human genetics. They appear dormant, suppressed by millennia of genetic drift or deliberate alteration. But the ambassador's contact seems to have acted like a key, initiating a cascade effect, reactivating these latent sequences in the localized area. Deliberate alteration. Serika seized on the phrase. What do you mean? Varela hesitated, glancing nervously towards the closed door. Empress, this delves into areas forbidden by imperial doctrine, ancient history, the time of sundering. Speak. Doctor. Now, Serika commanded, taking a deep breath. Varela continued. Ancient Morathan texts, the ones restricted even from most scholars, speak of our origins not as an evolution native to Morthos, but elsewhere. Fragmentary data hints at a schism, an exile. There are whispers, legends really, of a Project Vire, never fully substantiated, dismissed as myth. But the data here, it suggests, Empress, it suggests Morathans are not an alien species in the way we understand it. The genetic markers indicate we are human, or were, a divergent branch, genetically modified, exiled from Earth millennia ago for reasons lost to time or deliberately purged from our records. The revelation hung in the air, heavy and explosive. Jones stared at Varela, then at Serika, his mind struggling to grasp the immensity of it. Morethans weren't aliens. They were us, lost cousins, transformed, hostile, and now unknowingly circling back to their ancestral home. Serika stood utterly still, her face pale beneath the jet-black skin. We are human, she whispered, the concept seemingly shaking the foundations of her identity. Altered, Varela clarified quickly, significantly. The modifications are profound, affecting everything from cellular structure to lifespan, including the bioenergetic discharge, the lethal touch. It might be a side effect of those ancient modifications. Empress, a genetic defense mechanism, perhaps. designed by our creators or arising from the alterations that became pathologically potent over generations. And your bloodline, the royal lineage descending from the first Empress, the legends say it carries unique markers. Perhaps, perhaps this reactivation, this transformation you are experiencing, isn't contamination. Perhaps it's a failsafe, a dormant potential encoded only in the royal bloodline, designed to be triggered by renewed contact with original human stock. Serika looked down at her wrist again, no longer with fear, but with a dawning, terrifying understanding. The subtle shift in her skin tone wasn't a mutation. It was a return, a regression towards a shared ancestry she never knew existed. She was, quite literally, becoming more human. Project Vire, she murmured. Varela, I need everything you can find on it. Access the deepest archives, the forbidden records. Use my authority. Discretion is paramount. Yes, Empress, Varela replied, already saving her scan data onto encrypted chips. And Ambassador. Serika turned back to Jones, her expression complex, a mixture of the old authority and a new, profound uncertainty. It seems your hypothesis was more accurate than you could have possibly imagined. You haven't just offered an alliance. You may have unearthed the truth of our entire existence. She paused, the weight of the discovery settling upon her. This changes the war. It changes everything. But it also puts us in extreme danger. If Vrax learns of this, if he learns that our perceived superiority is based on a lie, that we are merely altered humans, and that I am reverting, he will not hesitate to seize power, branding me a traitor, a genetic throwback. Then we must proceed carefully, Jones said, his mind racing with the strategic implications. The truth must be revealed, but at the right time, in the right way. Agreed. Serika nodded. Dr. Varela, begin your research immediately. Report only to me, Ambassador Jones. You will remain here. We need to understand this connection, this reactivation. It may be the key not only to our past, but to preventing mutual annihilation. The Empress and the Ambassador, representatives of species locked in a genocidal conflict, now shared a secret that could either unite their peoples or tear their respective civilizations apart from within. The fate of two races, born from the same cradle, now rested on the edge of a genetic revelation. While Dr. Varela immersed herself in the heavily encrypted and guarded Imperial archives, seeking whispers of Project Vire and the true origins of the Morathan race, Jones remained in the relative sanctuary of Serika's private chambers. He was treated not as a prisoner, but as a crucial, albeit confidential, asset. Nutritious sustenance was provided, and he was granted limited access to communications, carefully monitored, allowing him to send coded, reassuringly vague messages back to the UNSC Endeavour, reporting slow progress in diplomatic overtures, buying precious time. Serika visited him frequently between her demanding duties as Empress. Their conversations shifted from formal negotiation to cautious exploration of the impossible truth that now bound them. The patch on her wrist continued its slow, subtle transformation. It wasn't spreading rapidly, but the change was undeniable, a visible reminder of the genetic heritage stirring within her. Under Varela's guidance, they conducted further, carefully controlled contact experiments, brief touches, hand to hand, arm to arm. Each time, Jones remained unharmed. Each time, the transformation on Serika's skin seemed to subtly intensify near the contact point, the jet black yielding further to warmer, human-like tones, almost like watching ink slowly dilute in water. It feels different, Serika confessed during one such session, observing her hand where Jones's fingers rested lightly against her palm. Not painful, just a warmth, a resonance, like a dormant circuit finally receiving power. And the lethal discharge? Jones asked quietly. She shook her head, her silver eyes troubled. It feels distant, subdued, as if your proximity neutralizes it, or perhaps rechannels it. Varella's theory, Jones mused, is that the energy is being redirected inwards, fueling the genetic reactivation instead of discharging outwards. A convenient theory, Serika replied, though without her earlier skepticism. But it doesn't change the political reality. Vrax grows impatient. He senses something amiss. My continued engagement with you, the lack of immediate military escalation following your arrival, it fuels his suspicions. Indeed, the atmosphere aboard the Crimson Oath was growing palpably tense. General Corvus Vrax, a staunch traditionalist who believed utterly in Morathan's superiority and the divine right of the Empress's lethal power, made no secret of his disapproval. He saw Jones's continued presence as an insult, Serika's secretive consultations with Dr. Varela as potentially treasonous. Whispers circulated among the crew, fueled by Vrax's loyalists, questioning the Empress's resolve, suggesting the human ambassador might be exerting some unknown, corrupting influence. Varela, working under immense pressure and secrecy, finally made a breakthrough. She managed to decrypt fragments of data from the era of the First Empress, hidden deep within redundant memory cores, missed by previous purges. Empress, ambassador, she announced, her voice hushed with excitement and fear during a clandestine meeting, projecting fragmented holographic images into the air. It's true, all of it. Project Vire was real. A Terran project over 10 millennia ago. Genetic augmentation for interstellar colonization. Pushed too far. Deemed too dangerous. Our ancestors weren't exiled. They fled after a catastrophic conflict. Branded as abominations. The images flickered, showing ancient star charts, fragmented genetic diagrams, and text logs. The First Empress wasn't Morathan by birth, Varela continued, pointing to a specific log entry. She was one of the original Vire subjects. She led the Exodus. The lethal touch, it seems to have manifested fully in her, perhaps stabilized as a dominant trait, passed down the royal line. But this log, she highlighted a passage. It speaks of a return contingency, a failsafe encoded in her direct descendants. Renewed contact with baseline human stock was predicted to trigger a genetic reconciliation, a potential pathway back from the extreme Vire modifications. Your transformation, Empress, it's the contingency activating. It's proof. Serika stared at the ancient text, her expression unreadable. A pathway back, she murmured. So, the First Empress foresaw this, hoped for it. It seems possible, Varela said. But the records are damaged. Incomplete. To find definitive proof, the full context, we need access to the First Empress's primary repository, her personal archives. Legend places them not here, but on Morthos Prime, within the Imperial Citadel, guarded by protocols even I cannot bypass remotely. Before they could discuss the implications further, a proximity alert chimed urgently. Empress, Varela said quickly, shutting down the holographic display. General Vrax is approaching. He bypassed standard protocols to request an immediate audience. He knows, Serika stated, her voice hardening, the Empress persona snapping back into place. Or he suspects enough to force my hand. She smoothed her uniform, concealing her wrist. Varela, secure your findings. Jones, remain calm. Let me handle this. The door slid open, and General Vrax strode in, his gunmetal gray armor seeming darker, more menacing than usual. His eyes, glowing with cold fury, immediately fixed on Jones, then swept dismissively over Varela before settling on Serika. "Empress," Vrax said, his voice tight with suppressed rage, dispensing with formal titles. "Your continued dalliance with this Terran specimen has gone on long enough. The fleet demands action. Earth lies vulnerable. Yet you waste time in secretive meetings, consulting with geneticists while our enemies potentially regroup. My actions are my own concern, General," Serika replied coolly, meeting his glare without flinching. "The timing of our final assault requires careful strategic consideration, not blind aggression. Aggression is our nature, Empress," Vrax countered, stepping closer. "Strength is our right, yet I hear whispers. Whispers of hesitation, of contamination. They say the human's presence weakens you, that you shy away from the duties your unique heritage demands." He glanced meaningfully towards her hands. "Perhaps a demonstration is required to remind the fleet, and perhaps yourself, of the power vested in the royal bloodline." Serika knew this was a direct challenge, a test. He wanted her to execute Jones, or perhaps Varela, to prove her Morathan purity. Her lethal authority remained intact. Refusal would be seen as confirmation of his accusations. "My authority needs no demonstration, Vrax," Serika said, her voice dropping dangerously low. "But your insubordination borders on treason. Is it treason to uphold Morathan tradition?" Vrax shot back. "Is it treason to demand the Empress act as an Empress should, not as a collaborator?" His hand moved towards his sidearm. "I believe your judgment has been compromised, Serika, perhaps fatally, for the good of the Empire. I must relieve you of command." Several armored guards loyal to Vrax suddenly appeared in the doorway behind him, weapons raised. Simultaneously, alarms began blaring throughout the ship, internal security alerts. A coup. Vrax had planned this. "Vrax, you fool!" Serika spat, instinctively moving to shield Jones and Varela. "You don't understand what you're doing." "I understand that power resides with strength," Vrax declared, "and yours appears to be failing." He drew his energy pistol. "Surrender command. Serika, door be removed." Chaos erupted. Varela, surprisingly quick, activated an emergency bulkhead control on a nearby panel, slamming a secondary door shut, momentarily blocking Vrax's reinforcements. Simultaneously, Serika lunged, not at Vrax, but towards a concealed weapons locker. Jones reacted instinctively, grabbing a heavy data slate from the table and hurling it at Vrax, momentarily distracting him. "We need to get to the shuttle bay," Serika shouted, retrieving two compact energy sidearms from the locker, tossing one to Jones. "Varela, is there a secure route?" "Sub-level maintenance tunnels," Varela replied, already accessing ship schematics on a handheld device amidst the flashing red alert lights. "Sector 5 connects near auxiliary docking control. It will be tight, but hopefully less guarded." Vrax recovered quickly, firing a warning shot that vaporized the data slate Jones had thrown. "Traitors! Seal all decks! Capture them!" he roared into his communicator. "Go!" Serika yelled, firing suppressing bursts towards Vrax, forcing him to take cover behind the command table. Jones, heart pounding, followed Varela as she activated a hidden panel, revealing a narrow accessway. Serika fired one last burst before ducking through the opening, just as Vrax's guards blasted through the main door. The panel slid shut behind them, plunging them into the cramped, dimly lit maintenance tunnel. The sounds of pursuit echoed from the chamber they had just fled. They were fugitives aboard the flagship, hunted by their own kind. carrying a secret that could save or doom two civilizations, racing towards an uncertain escape and a desperate journey to uncover the final truth hidden on Morthos Prime. Meanwhile, far away, near the Sol system's edge, depleted Earth defense fleets, unaware of the potential diplomatic breakthrough or the coup aboard the Morathan flagship, registered the internal alert signals from the Crimson Oath as possible infighting or system malfunction. Misinterpreting the situation as a potential moment of weakness, commanders authorized a limited, probing offensive against the Morathan blockade, a move intended to test enemy readiness, but one that, in the delicate context of Jones's mission and Serika's precarious position, could inadvertently escalate the conflict beyond any hope of peaceful resolution. The galaxy held its breath, balanced on the knife edge of revelation and war. The maintenance tunnels were a claustrophobic maze of conduits, humming machinery, and dim emergency lighting. Varela led the way, navigating by the flickering schematics on her datapad, while Jones and Serika covered their rear, weapons ready. The distant sounds of pursuit spurred them onward, the clang of boots on metal grating, shouted commands echoing through the ventilation system. "Vrax won't expect us to head for the main shuttle bays," Serika panted, glancing back down the dark corridor. "He'll assume we're trying to sabotage critical systems or reach the bridge. Auxiliary docking control manages the automated courier drones and long-range scout vessels," Varela explained, ducking under a low-hanging pipe. "Less traffic, less security. If we can access a scout ship, its transponder codes are less likely to be immediately flagged." "Good thinking, Doctor," Jones commended, though his mind was racing with the implications of their flight. They had the fragmented proof of Project Vire, the knowledge of Serika's transformation, but without the full context from the first Empress's archives. Convincing the Morathan High Council, let alone the wider fleet, would be nearly impossible, especially with Vrax's consolidating power. Their hurried progress was interrupted by the hiss of a nearby access panel opening. Two Morathan soldiers, alerted by the internal security sweep, peered into the tunnel, their weapons raised. Serika reacted instantly, firing 2 precise shots from her energy pistol. The blasts weren't lethal, set to stun intensity, but they were effective. The soldiers collapsed, momentarily incapacitated. "We can't keep this up," Serika muttered, urging the others forward. "Vrax will flood these tunnels soon." As they neared Sector 5, the sounds of conflict intensified above them, the heavy thud of ordnance, the shriek of energy weapons. "Vrax is purging loyalists," Serika said grimly. "He's securing the ship. Finally." Varela stopped before a heavy maintenance hatch. "This leads to the subdeck beneath auxiliary docking control," she whispered, quickly working the manual release levers. The hatch swung inward with a groan, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. Quickly, they climbed down into another cramped space, this one filled with power conduits pulsing with energy. Varela consulted her datapad again. "Directly above us is Bay Alpha Niner. It houses a squadron of Shadow-class scout vessels. Long, range, minimal crew, designed for stealth." "Perfect," Jones said. "How do we get up there?" "There's an emergency lift system nearby, rarely used," Varela replied, pointing down a narrow catwalk. "If the power hasn't been cut, luck, for once, seemed to be with them." The lift was operational. They crowded inside the small cage, ascending rapidly. As they rose, Serika looked at Jones, her expression a mixture of determination and anxiety. The transformation on her wrist, hidden beneath her sleeve, felt like a ticking clock. "Even if we reach Morthos Prime," she said quietly, "infiltrating the Imperial Citadel is considered impossible. It's the most heavily guarded place in the Empire. We have Varella's knowledge, and your authority, or what remains of it, Jones countered. And we have the truth. We have to try. The lift shuddered to a halt, opening onto the docking bay's hangar deck. Bay Alpha Niner was quieter than the main hangars, lit by emergency lighting. Sleek, black scout ships rested in their cradles like dormant predators. A skeleton crew of technicians, likely confused by the conflicting alert statuses, looked up in surprise as the Empress, a human, and the head xenobiologist emerged from an unscheduled lift. Before the technicians could react or raise an alarm, Serika stepped forward, projecting an aura of absolute command despite her fugitive status. "Secure channel breach on the upper decks," she announced, her voice ringing with authority. "General Vrax has initiated a containment protocol. This sector is now under my direct emergency command. Prepare Shadow 7 for immediate launch. Priority Alpha clearance, the technicians, conditioned to obey the Empress without question, snapped to attention, overriding the confused signals filtering down from Vrax's command. They scrambled towards the designated scout ship, initiating pre-flight sequences. "Impressive," Jones murmured to Serika as they hurried towards the ship. "Authority is a habit," she replied tersely. "Difficult to break, even when staging a coup." Varela was already at the ship's access ramp, interfacing her datapad with the vessel's systems, inputting override codes and flight plans. "Course laid in for Morthos Prime," she reported. "Stealth systems engaged. Minimal energy signature." They boarded the Shadow 7 just as warning sirens began blaring specifically within Bay Alpha Niner. Vrax's forces were closing in. "Seal the hatch," Serika ordered. The ramp retracted, sealing them inside the compact cockpit. Varela expertly guided the ship out of its cradle and towards the bay's energy shield. "Requesting shield deactivation, priority Alpha." Serika commanded into the ship's comms, using her Imperial override codes. There was a tense moment of silence. Then the shimmering blue barrier flickered and died. Varela pushed the engines to maximum, and the small scout ship shot out of the Crimson Oath, vanishing into the blackness of space using its advanced stealth technology. Behind them, aboard the flagship, General Vrax roared in fury as reports of the Empress's escape reached him. "Track that vessel," he commanded. "All ships, full alert. The Empress has turned traitor, aided by the human and the scientist Varela. They are enemies of the Empire." His message blasted across the Morthan fleet network, consolidating his narrative, painting Serika as corrupted and dangerous. Meanwhile, the UNSC task force, having launched its probing attack, encountered stiffer resistance than anticipated as Vrax, now firmly in command, ordered a disproportionately aggressive response to demonstrate his authority and mask the internal chaos. The limited skirmish quickly escalated, threatening to become a full-blown battle neither side truly understood the context of. Aboard the fleeing Shadow 7, the three fugitives watched the tactical displays showing the Crimson Oath receding behind them and the alarming energy signatures of the escalating conflict near Earth. "They're fighting," Jones said heavily. Earth Command walked right into Vrax's consolidation of power. "We have to reach Morthos Prime," Serika stated, her gaze fixed on the star charts leading to the Morthan homeworld. "The archives are our only hope now. To stop Vrax, to stop the war, to reveal the truth." She glanced down at her hand, instinctively touching the place where her skin was slowly, irrevocably changing. "The truth of who we are." The small ship sped through the void, carrying the weight of two civilizations, racing towards a confrontation with their own history. The journey to Morthos Prime was fraught with tension. They traveled under complete stealth, navigating treacherous asteroid fields and avoiding standard hyperspace lanes, relying on Varella's knowledge of ancient, forgotten roots. Serika wrestled with the implications of her heritage, the weight of millennia of Morithan identity crashing against the undeniable truth revealed by Varella's research and the changes occurring in her own body. The transformation was slow but steady, faint patterns, like intricate, bioluminescent circuitry beneath the surface, were becoming more visible on her hands and forearms, where contact with Jones had occurred. It wasn't merely a lightening of pigment anymore, but a complex restructuring. Jones, meanwhile, felt the immense burden of his position. He was the catalyst, the unintended key to unlocking a past that could reshape the future of both humans and Morithans. He watched Serika, seeing not just the ruthless Empress, but the individual grappling with a profound identity crisis, and felt a growing, unexpected empathy. Their shared predicament, their reliance on each other for survival, forged a tentative bond in the crucible of their flight. Varela remained focused on the task ahead, analyzing the Citadel's security protocols, searching for weaknesses, preparing for the infiltration. The first Empress's archives are located in the Sanctum Progenitus, she explained, displaying a holographic schematic of the vast Imperial Citadel complex on Morthos Prime. Deep beneath the primary command spire, biometric access keyed to the royal bloodline, but also layered with energy fields and sentient AI guardians dating back millennia. Standard infiltration tactics are useless, but the archives were designed for the return contingency, Serika reasoned. There must be a protocol, a specific way for someone like me, undergoing this reactivation, to gain access. That's our hope. Varela agreed. The fragments I recovered mention somatic resonance as a potential key. Your changing biology might interact with the ancient systems in a way Vrax, or any unaltered Morithan, cannot replicate. As they approached the Morthos system, news crackled through encrypted, barely decipherable transmissions intercepted by the scout ship's advanced sensors. Vrax had fully consolidated his power, declaring Serika a heretic and a traitor, corrupted by alien influence. He had ordered the fleet to prepare for a full-scale assault on Earth, using Serika's alleged betrayal as justification for accelerating the campaign. Simultaneously, reports indicated growing unease among some Morithan sectors, ships whose commanders were hesitant to accept Vrax's narrative without question. Disturbed by the sudden coup and the lack of verifiable proof against Serika, the Empire was fracturing. We're running out of time, Jones stated grimly, observing the tactical reports. Vrax intends to burn Earth to solidify his rule. Then we cannot fail, Serika said, her voice firm, the resolve hardening in her silver eyes. Using the Shadow 7's stealth capabilities, Varela navigated them past the orbital defense platforms and into the upper atmosphere of Morthos Prime. The Morithan homeworld was a place of stark, imposing beauty, towering crystalline cities fused with dark volcanic rock, under a sky dominated by a binary sunset casting long, dramatic shadows. They landed the small ship in a remote, geologically unstable region far from the main population centers, concealing it within a deep canyon riddled with geothermal vents that would mask its energy signature. The Imperial Citadel dominated the planet's capital, a structure of impossible scale, piercing the clouds, a monument to millennia of Morithan power. Getting inside required bypassing layers of planetary surveillance and ground patrols. Varela utilized her knowledge of maintenance corridors and ancient geothermal tunnels, similar to those on the Crimson Oath, but vastly more complex, to guide them towards the Citadel's lower foundations. The journey was arduous, requiring them to navigate treacherous underground passages, bypass pressure sensors, and evade automated security drones. Serika's royal lineage, however, proved unexpectedly useful. Certain ancient security checkpoints, keyed to genetic markers, registered her presence and allowed them passage, mistaking her for an authorized inspector on an unscheduled tour of archaic systems. Her transforming biology didn't trigger alarms. Instead, it seemed to placate the ancient network. Finally, after hours of tense progress, they reached the Citadel's sub-basement levels. Approaching the heavily shielded entrance to the Sanctum Progenitus, it was a massive vault door, crafted from an unknown alloy that seemed to absorb all light and energy, bearing the ancient crest of the first Empress. Two imposing, silent sentinels, robotic constructs of archaic design, stood guard. Biometric scanners dot synergy field emitters, AI guardians, Varela whispered, analyzing the setup, and the door itself requires a somatic key. Empress, place your hand on the central crest. Serika hesitated for only a moment, then stepped forward, removing her gauntlet. Her hand, now subtly but visibly altered, the darker skin overlaid with faint dot complex patterns, pressed against the cold metal crest. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the crest glowed with a soft, internal light that matched the patterns on her skin. A low hum resonated through the chamber. The robotic sentinels remained motionless, but the air crackled with energy. It's recognizing the contingency, Varela breathed. Suddenly, a voice, ancient and synthesized, echoed from hidden speakers. Genetic anomaly detected. Royal lineage confirmed. Somatic resonance initiated. State your purpose, descendant. Serika stood tall, her voice clear and steady. I am Empress Serika, heir to the first Empress. The first seek the knowledge held within, the truth of our origins, the purpose of the return contingency. There was a pause, filled only by the hum of power. Verification proceeding, the voice stated. Complex energy fields washed over Serika, scanning her, analyzing her unique, transforming biology. Jones held his breath. Return contingency confirmed active. Access protocol engaged. The truth awaits. Descendant. May it guide your path. With a deep grinding sound that resonated through the very rock, the massive vault door began to slide open, revealing not a room, but a shimmering portal of pure energy. The sentinels stepped aside. This is it, Varela said, awe in her voice. The first Empress's repository. Stay here, Doctor, Serika commanded. Monitor communications. Be ready. She looked at Jones. Will you come? He nodded without hesitation. Wherever this leads, together. Empress Serika and Ambassador Jones stepped through the energy portal, leaving Varela and the modern Morithan world behind, entering the heart of their shared, ancient past. Inside the portal was not a room, but an immersive holographic environment. They stood on a platform surrounded by swirling nebulae and ghostly images of ancient ships fleeing a burning world, Earth. Before them coalesced the image of a woman, regal and imposing, yet with eyes filled with profound sorrow and fierce determination. She wore archaic armor, similar in style to Serika's but clearly much older. Her features, though rendered in light, bore a striking resemblance to Serika's, yet possessed an underlying human structure. It was the first Empress. Welcome, descendant, the holographic figure spoke, her voice carrying the weight of ages, yet infused with a surprising warmth. And welcome, son of Earth. I foresaw this moment, though I prayed it would come under less dire circumstances. You are she, Serika asked, her voice filled with awe. The first Empress. I am a memory construct, the figure replied. Programmed with my knowledge, my regrets, my hopes, I established this archive to preserve the truth. Should my lineage ever reconnect with our origins? Project Vire. It was humanity reaching for the stars. But ambition outpaced wisdom. We altered ourselves, sought power over flesh, and in doing so, became something other, something feared. Conflict was inevitable. We fled, branded monsters, carrying the seeds of that power and its terrible cost within us. She gestured towards the swirling images. The lethal touch, she continued, her voice tinged with sadness, was an unforeseen consequence of the Vire enhancements, stabilized and amplified in my own system. A tragic flaw, passed down my line, becoming both a symbol of authority and a curse of isolation. I encoded the return contingency. This potential for genetic reconciliation triggered by baseline human contact as a desperate hope. A chance for my descendants to find a path back, not necessarily to Earth, but to balance, to integration, not isolation. Holographic records materialized around them, detailed genetic charts, historical logs of the Exodus, recordings of debates among the first Morathans about their future, their identity. It laid bare the truth. The Morathan Empire was built upon the foundation of altered, exiled humans who had deliberately, over millennia, suppressed the truth of their origins, embracing a narrative of inherent superiority to justify their conquests and mask their deep-seated fear of their own altered nature. Vrax represents that fear. The first Empress's construct stated, her image flickering as if sensing the present danger. He clings to the dogma of Morathan perfection because the truth of our origin terrifies him. He would see Earth destroyed rather than admit kinship. What must I do? Serika asked, the weight of her legacy, her choice, settling upon her. The choice is yours, descendant, the construct replied. You carry the potential for reconciliation within your very cells. Show them the truth. Reveal our shared history. Offer not subjugation, but integration. Some will resist, like Vrax. But many are weary of endless war, of the cold isolation our perfection has brought. They may listen. She looked towards Jones. And you, Ambassador, your people must also understand. We are not monsters, but prodigal children, lost and transformed. Peace requires acceptance from both sides. The construct then imparted the access codes and protocols needed to broadcast the archive's core data across secure Morathan military and civilian networks. The truth is your weapon now, and your shield. Use it wisely. Go. Vrax prepares to unleash genocide. Time is short. The image of the first Empress faded. The holographic environment dissolved, and Serika and Jones found themselves back in the vault chamber. The energy portal shimmering closed behind them. The massive door remained open. Serika felt profoundly changed, the knowledge settling deep within her, aligning with the physical transformation she was undergoing. She now understood her path. They quickly rejoined Varela, who reported increasing fleet mobilization signals. Vrax was moving. We have it, Doctor, Serika announced, her voice ringing with newfound certainty. The complete truth and the means to broadcast it. Using the Citadel's ancient but powerful communication arrays, rerouted through Varela's expertise and authenticated by Serika's resonant genetic signature, they bypassed Vrax's command network locks. They initiated the broadcast, sending the first Empress's testimony, the historical records, the proof of Project Vire, and images of Serika's own transforming biology across the Morathan Empire, to the fleet, to the homeworld, to the occupied colonies. The effect was instantaneous and chaotic. Shipboard communications channels erupted. Soldiers and officers viewed the undeniable proof of their human origins, the explanation for their Empress's lethal touch and her current transformation, the revelation that their entire identity was based on a millennia-old lie. Disbelief warred with dawning understanding. Many felt betrayed by Vrax's dogma. Others recoiled in horror, clinging to the old beliefs. Divisions ripped through the fleet. Ships loyal to Vrax maintained their course towards Earth, but dozens, then hundreds, hesitated, their commanders demanding clarification, questioning orders, refusing to participate in a potentially fratricidal war based on deception. A civil awakening, born of truth, was spreading through the Morithan Empire. Enraged by the broadcast originating from the heart of his conquered territory, Vrax ordered the Citadel bombarded from orbit, hoping to silence Serika permanently, but his orders were met with resistance. Key ships and the orbital defense platforms refused, citing the need to verify the Empress's claims. Vrax, realizing his control was slipping, made a fateful decision, gathering the ships still loyal to him, a formidable force, but no longer the entire might of the Empire. He broke away from Morthos Prime, abandoning the burgeoning civil conflict, and initiated a direct, high-speed burn towards Earth. If he couldn't rule a united empire, he would achieve his goal of annihilating humanity's cradle, cementing his legacy in fire and blood. "He's running," Jones observed grimly, watching the tactical display in the Citadel's ancient command center. "He's going to fulfill his promise," Serika replied, her face set. Her transformation was more pronounced now, the human tones more integrated, yet still retaining a unique Morithan luminescence. She was becoming something new, a bridge between two peoples. "He cannot be allowed to reach Earth." She turned to Varela. "Doctor, can you open a priority channel to Vrax's breakaway fleet, and to all remaining Morithan ships, and to the UNSC command near Earth?" "Yes, Empress," Varela confirmed, her fingers flying across the console. "Patch me through," Serika commanded. Her image appeared on screens across dozens of Morithan warships and, hesitantly accepted. Aboard the UNSC Endeavor, she stood tall, the evidence of her transformation visible, a living testament to the truth she had revealed. "Morithans," she began, her voice resonating with quiet power. "You have seen the truth of our past. General Vrax clings to a lie, leading those loyal to him towards an act of senseless genocide against our own distant kin. This madness must end." She paused, then her gaze hardened. "Corvus Vrax," she addressed him directly, "your path leads only to destruction. I offer another way. I invoke the right of challenge, the ancient law predating even the first Empress's reign. Leadership decided not by fleets and bombs, but by single combat. Cease your attack. Face me. Let the future of our people be decided by conviction, not by slaughter." Aboard Vrax's flagship, stunned silence met her challenge. The rite was archaic, almost mythical, but deeply ingrained in Morithan warrior culture. To refuse would be seen as cowardice, undermining his claim to leadership through strength. After a tense moment, Vrax's image appeared, his face a mask of fury. "You invoke the old ways, traitor," he spat. "Very well, I accept your challenge. Let your corrupted form be purified by true Morithan might. We shall meet between our fleets. Prepare for oblivion." Serika. The breakaway fleet halted its advance towards Earth. The stage was set for a final confrontation, not between armies, but between two ideologies, embodied by two individuals, under the watchful eyes of two civilizations balanced on the precipice of annihilation or reconciliation. Serika took a deep breath. She wasn't just fighting for survival. She was fighting for evolution over vengeance, for a future where Truth, not fear, defined her people. The designated meeting point was neutral space, equidistant between Vrax's breakaway fleet and the bulk of the Morathan forces that had hesitated. Now observing with rapt attention, the UNSC Endeavour and its accompanying Earthships also held position, watching the unfolding drama via relayed Morathan transmissions. Ambassador Jones having communicated the fragile hope inherent in Serika's challenge. A temporary ceasefire held, fragile and tense. A small, neutral platform was deployed between the flagship Vrax now commanded and the Shadow 7, which had ferried Serika. Jones and Varela from Morthos Prime. Protocol dictated the combatants meet alone, armed only with traditional Morathan energy glaives, weapons requiring skill and precision, not just raw power. Serika donned simpler, non-regal armor, functional and unadorned. Her transformation was clearly visible now, her skin a complex tapestry of Morathan jet black interwoven with warm, human tones, shimmering with a soft internal light. She was neither fully Morathan nor fully human, but something entirely new. Jones watched her prepare, seeing the immense weight she carried. "Are you sure about this?" "Serika," he asked quietly, "your touch, is it still lethal? Can you fight him without?" Serika flexed her hand, observing the intricate patterns. "The lethality is gone, Nathaniel, completely neutralized by the transformation." Just as Varela predicted, it seems the contingency wasn't just about recognition, but about correction. The energy that fueled the curse now fuels something else. Integration, life, not death. She picked up the energy glaive, its blade humming to life with a soft blue light. "I will not kill him. That would make me no better than what he represents. This is about proving that our strength lies not in destruction, but in embracing the truth, in choosing evolution." She boarded the transport shuttle alone, ascending towards the dueling platform. Vrax arrived simultaneously from his ship, clad in his customary gunmetal gray armor, his face grim, his eyes burning with conviction in his own righteousness. He ignited his glaive, its blade a harsh, fiery red. They faced each other on the stark metal platform, silent sentinels against the backdrop of stars and warships. "Your transformation is complete, traitor," Vrax sneered. "You are an abomination, a dilution of Morathan perfection. I am the future." "Corvus," Serika replied calmly, settling into a defensive stance. "A future you refuse to see. We are not defined by purity, but by truth. Our origins don't weaken us. They offer us a choice. The only choice is dominance," Vrax roared, lunging forward, his red glaive slashing through the void. The duel began. Vrax fought with raw aggression, power, and the refined techniques of a seasoned Morathan general. His blows were strong, fast, aimed to overwhelm. Serika, however, moved with a newfound grace and speed. The transformation seemed to have enhanced her reflexes, her connection to the subtle energies around her. She parried Vrax's furious attacks, her blue glaive a fluid shield against his onslaught. She did not press the attack, focusing instead on defense, evasion, looking for an opening, but not for a killing blow. Their blades clashed, energy crackling, lighting the platform in stark flashes of red and blue. Vrax grew increasingly frustrated by Serika's resilience, her refusal to be baited into a reckless exchange. He saw her defense not as skill, but as weakness, a confirmation of her corruption. "Fight me." "Serika," he bellowed, unleashing a powerful combination. "Show me the strength you claim to possess." "Strength is not measured solely in destruction, Corvus," Serika replied, deftly sidestepping a vicious thrust. her glaive momentarily binding his. In that instant, she saw her opening, not to strike, but to disarm. With a complex twist of her wrist, she locked his glaive, channeled a precise pulse of energy through her own weapon, and sent his energy glaive flying from his grasp. It clattered across the platform, extinguishing. Vrax stood disarmed, panting, staring in disbelief. Serika held her blue glaive steady, its tip pointed not at his throat, but lowered slightly, a gesture of cessation, not threat. "It's over, Corvus," she said, her voice clear and carrying across the comms channels broadcasting the duel. "Yield. Choose reason over pointless annihilation." Vrax looked from his empty hands to Serika's transformed face, then out at the silent fleets hanging in the void. Defeat, public and undeniable, washed over him. Yet, ingrained pride and fanaticism warred within him. "Never," he whispered, and in a final act of defiance, lunged forward, unarmed, attempting to tackle Serika, perhaps hoping to force her hand, to make her kill him. Serika sidestepped easily, using his momentum against him. She didn't strike. Instead, she caught his arm, using a precise nerve hold derived from ancient Morthan martial arts, neutralizing his attack and forcing him to his knees without causing lasting injury. He struggled briefly, then slumped, defeated not by superior force, but by controlled restraint. "The duel is concluded," Serika announced formally, deactivating her glaive. "General Vrax is defeated. By the right of challenge, leadership is affirmed." She looked directly into the broadcast pickup. "I offer the crews of the breakaway fleet a choice. Rejoin the Empire under the banner of truth and reconciliation, or depart in peace. There has been enough bloodshed." Aboard Vrax's former flagship, and across the other ships of his faction, stunned silence reigned. Then, slowly, acknowledgements came in. Ship after ship signaled compliance, accepting Serika's authority, requesting permission to rejoin the main fleet. The rebellion, born of fear and dogma, dissolved in the face of truth and a leader who chose evolution over vengeance. The Morthan fleet, though shaken and facing an uncertain future, began the slow process of reunification. The immediate threat to Earth evaporated. In the aftermath, a new era dawned, cautiously, hesitantly. Serika, now firmly established as Empress, not by divine right of a lethal touch, but by the mandate of truth and proven leadership, initiated formal talks with Earth, represented by Ambassador Jones. The revelations of their shared ancestry paved the way for unprecedented dialogue. It was not easy. Millennia of hostility, fear, and divergent evolution left deep scars. But the foundation for peace was laid. Dr. Varela spearheaded a joint scientific initiative, studying the return contingency and the potential for controlled, voluntary genetic integration. Many Morthans, inspired by Serika's transformation and weary of their rigid existence, volunteered, seeking a path towards the balance the first Empress had hoped for. Similarly, some humans, intrigued by the potential for enhanced longevity and resilience, volunteered for parallel studies. It was the beginning of a long, slow process of healing and rediscovery for both branches of humanity. Nathaniel Jones and Empress Serika, their fates inextricably linked by that first, shocking touch, found their professional collaboration deepening into mutual respect, understanding, and eventually, love. Serika's transformation stabilized, leaving her a unique being embodying the synthesis of Morthan and human, a living symbol of the reconciliation she championed. Their eventual union, a marriage between the human ambassador and the transformed Morathan Empress was celebrated across both civilizations as a powerful symbol of hope and unity. Leading together, they guided their respective peoples away from the precipice of war and towards a future defined not by conquest or fear, but by truth, choice, and the slow, patient work of building peace upon the rediscovered foundations of a shared heritage. The stars, once symbols of division and conflict, began to look like pathways towards a shared destiny, illuminated by the dawn of understanding between the long-lost children of Earth. The silence of space began to fill, not with the sounds of battle, but with the tentative whispers of cooperation